What's up, Ken Quinn?
Wow, that music just got my blood going, buddy. That was awesome.
That is a really powerful video, and my hat is off to you, Quinn, for putting that together. That is really
excellent
good.
job. Makes me want to go join something.
Doesn't it? That music just makes you get all fired up, and I love that kind of music, man.
Well, but you know what, though? Let's talk about that for a second, because, everybody, I was having a conversation with Quinn, you, and then Aaron also, and everyone is under an extreme amount of stress right now. The entire world is, for a situation that is out of our control, at least so we think. And everyone wants to be able to do something about it, to be able to control their own life and their own future. Well, it's the politicians that are stealing that ability from us. So we need to term limit them out of their office, especially Congress. That's what we're here for. By helping us, you can help yourself. You can help your children, your grandchildren. I mean, that's what this is about. That's why we do it. That is a terrific video, Ken. That is really
well,
good.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And that video, we put that together. What we want you to do, well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We appreciate you spending the next half hour with us or so. But that video is really, if you notice, targeted to legislators and candidates for office. So that is really what we're using and asking everybody out there. If you could please share that video on your social media page and actually send it to the people running for the state House and state Senate in your district, because as you can see, we have, and if you go to our page, you can see it on the video, we have hundreds of candidates and current legislators signing this pledge. And so we're using this video to encourage more to sign, and we could really use your help making this go viral. So if you can do that, I'm going to actually pull it up. I'll post it here in the thread so you guys can just quickly access it.
All right, very good. There was a question that I just noticed on the Facebook broadcast. It says, how do you go about getting them and stop just talking about it? Well, that's a very interesting question. We get that a lot. We don't talk about it. We don't. We're actually going after them. And there is a process that we are involved in order to do that very thing. That's what this entire organization is about. And what we are trying to do is term limit Congress. And there is a way to do it. There's actually two different ways to do it. The only way, based on a Supreme Court decision, is to amend the Constitution to limit the terms to Congress. That's it, period. You can't vote on it. You can't do it on a ballot. You can't put it on your petition. There's nothing else you can do. The only way you can do it is to amend the Constitution. So how do you do that? Well, Article 5 of the Constitution tells us how to do that. There are two different ways to propose amendments. There's only one way to ratify an amendment. So it boils down to the states, and that's what we do. That's why we are here. We are involved in all 50 states trying to get this done. Quinn, it's kind of a general, kind of a general overview. I didn't want to go a whole lot into the weeds.
We don't want to get into weeds on Article 5 every time. It's real simple. But that's, this question comes up all the time. Well, let's stop talking about it and do it. Well, that's why we need you, because this has got to come from the grassroots up. And without the state legislators getting pressure from their own constituents, why will they bother? So it needs to be a pressure point that all of us put on our state legislators to make this happen. I'll give you an example. Tonight, I'm going to a committee. This is a Republican committee. It's in my town. And both of the candidates for the candidate for the House and the candidate for the Senate have both signed that pledge. Okay. Because I go to these meetings and I make it an issue. They're gracious enough to let me speak at these meetings for just a few seconds, few minutes. And I've been doing it now for quite a while. And so I'm really pleased that the two people that are running for office in this district are pledge signers, and that's what it takes. Go to your meetings when the candidates come to your door, if they come to your door during this period of time. Hey, print out the pledge, have it ready for them, email it to them, go to their Facebook page. We need all of you asking them to do this, not just us and our team. We need all of you out there around the country doing this.
Right. And the
Yeah,
reason,
it's only important if it's important to you. You can't imagine the weight of the constituents because politicians don't naturally adopt this. I mean, it's kicking and screaming. And not all of them. A lot of them step right up and realize the wisdom of it, and they sign right away, and we appreciate those. But typically, the ones that are resistant, it's their constituents pinging them, reaching out to them, letting them know that, hey, this is important.
Yep.
you
And
know, and what we're talking about is in order to amend the Constitution, Congress has to propose an amendment, or the states can propose an amendment. So we're asking the states to do it because we know good and well that Congress will never do it. So that's when Ken Quinn talks about a petition. What he's talking about is a member of the state legislature or a candidate to become a member of the state legislature. And so we need those guys to ask, or we need the states to propose that amendment. So the state legislatures are the only ones that can do that. They have the power. It's also the state legislatures, by the way, that are the only ones that have the power to ratify any proposed amendments. So the states is where it's at. That's where we're working. That's why we need your help.
It's so backwards. Only the states can amend the U.S. Constitution, and yet so many people are afraid of having the states propose amendments. Does that make any sense? It's so illogical. And that is part of the fear propaganda that is out there against what we're trying to accomplish. And this kind of leads us into the next segment. And this comes up quite often. We try to share information about Article 5 to break down the mystery of this whole thing. And one of the arguments that we hear all the time is that, you know, an Article 5 convention can rewrite the Constitution and they can propose anything, that the delegates will go rogue and yada, yada, yada. It's just a bunch of nonsense. And one of the proofs, one of the many proofs to just completely destroy that argument. And I found this, when I came across this for the first time, it just blew me away, because this, beyond a shadow of a doubt, proves how limited and controlled this is. And Aaron's going to play it in just a minute, but let me set the stage. Okay, the year of this video, this took place in 1789. The Constitution was adopted in 1787. It got ratified a year later in 1788. The federal government did not begin until March 4th, 1789. Okay. Now, many of the states, when they ratified the Constitution, they submitted amendments that they wanted. Part of the deal is like, okay, we'll ratify this, but Congress, you better propose these amendments. Long story short, James Madison reviewed those amendments as they came in with Congress. And what he did is he put together the Bill of Rights. So he proposed these in Congress. And it ended up getting whittled down to 12 amendments, okay? Now, while that was happening, the state of Virginia was not waiting for Congress to do the right thing, which is awesome. That should be a good lesson for all of us. Do not depend on people in Congress to do what you expect them to do the right thing. We got to take matters into our own hands. And so Virginia, God love them, that's what they did. They passed an Article 5 application to call a convention to propose amendments basically for a Bill of Rights. And so while Madison was working on this, in comes this application from Virginia. Now, I think the date of this is May 5th or May 9th. Now, this is the very first debate in Congress in regard to an Article 5 application. And this is critical because, as you'll see from the quotes during this debate, all of them clearly understood that 2/3 of the state legislatures had to apply for the very same amendment or subject, okay, in order to call a convention. And so that's the setup here. I go into some more detail in the video. You might have to turn up your audio just a little bit, but with that as the entrance, Aaron, why don't you pull that up and play it? It's only 3 minutes, but it's really good information. Directed with U.S. term limits. In this segment, we are going to see how the first Congress understood that an Article 5 convention was a limited convention. Virginia submitted the very first Article 5 application primarily for a Bill of Rights. This debate occurred on May 5th, 1789. And what is very important here is that 54 members of that Congress were either delegates to the Federal Convention or delegates to their state conventions which ratified the Constitution, which means they completely understood the intent of an Article 5 convention. The following is from the House record. I will be stating the member's name and then we'll read their comment and we'll summarize at the end. Mr. Boudinot, according to the terms of the Constitution, the business cannot be taken up until a certain number of states have concurred in similar applications. Mr. Madison said he had no doubt but the House was inclined to treat the present application with respect, but he doubted the propriety of committing it because it would seem to imply that the House had a right to deliberate upon the subject. This he believed was not the case until 2/3 of the state legislatures concurred in such application, and then it is out of the power of Congress to decline complying. The most respectful and constitutional mode of performing our duty will be to let it enter on the minutes and remain upon the files of the House until similar applications come to hand from 2/3 of the states. Mr. Boudinot, now in this case there is nothing left for us to do but call one when 2/3 of the state legislatures apply for that purpose. Mr. Bland, the application now before the committee contains a number of reasons why it is necessary to call a convention. By the 5th article of the Constitution, Congress are obligated to order this convention when 2/3 of the legislatures apply for it. But how can these reasons be properly weighed unless it be done in committee? Mr. Tucker thought it not right to disregard the application of any state, and inferred that the House had a right to consider every application that was made. If 2/3 had not applied, the subject might be taken into consideration. But if 2/3 had applied, it precluded deliberation on the part of the House. Mr. Page thought it the best way to enter the application at large upon the journals and do the same by all that came in until sufficient were made to obtain their object. Based upon that debate, we can summarize the following. Number one, 2/3 of the state legislatures needed to concur on the subject in their applications. Number two, Congress has no authority to deliberate on the subject and must call the convention once 2/3 of the legislatures apply. And number three, Congress needs to weigh the applications to determine the subject matter and may take it into consideration if 2/3 of the legislatures do not apply for it. A few months later, after this debate, Congress weighed the amendments that were submitted by the states and in the end proposed 12 amendments for ratification. The first 10 were ratified in 17 directed with U.S. and are known today as the Bill of Rights. U.S. term limits is seeking to have 2/3 of the state legislatures concur in applications for a congressional term limits amendment. Please visit termlimits.com, join our effort, and let's get this done. Okay.
That lays it out pretty well.
Isn't that pretty simple? It's very clear, right? I can't see why this is so difficult for so many people.
Well, but I can, Ken. You've got a lot of people that, you know, they're basically two camps. And I was thinking about this as I was watching the video. You've got a camp that are resistant to change. They just want everything to stay the same, and they think the Constitution's just fine the way it is. What they fail to realize is everything is changing around them, and Congress is doing things that they don't have the authority to do because nobody is holding them accountable. Article 5 is the tool that does hold them accountable. Then there is the other camp that is deathly afraid of what we are doing because they know that we have the power to limit Washington, D.C.'s authority, the federal government's authority. We have the ability to limit those creatures we call congressmen up on Capitol Hill. And they are the ones that are there for their own self. They're there to enrich themselves. They're there for their own power. There are entire industries that rely on Washington, D.C. and the politicians. They don't want any of that to change. And so we scare them. They raise a lot of money to oppose us. They lie about us. And it's because they have a vested interest in Washington, D.C. And we are looking to break that back.
Now all of a sudden you're starting to hear Article 5 mentioned quite often. You know, just most recently, Herman Cain, just a wonderful patriot, passed, and he was a big advocate of term limits. There's lots of Article 5 groups around that realize the wisdom of Article 5. Why is the single focus around term limits so important? I think you touched on that just a little bit in your video, Quinn.
Yeah, well, that's what makes our organization unique. Out of the other groups that are out there, they are partisan. They're either on the left side of the political spectrum or on the right. U.S. term limits, this is an issue that both sides agree upon, and it polls extremely high. It averages, 82% across the board. And so this is probably the number one. I can't think of another issue in this country that has as much support as congressional term limits. And that's why this will be successful, because in order to have an amendment ratified, you got to get to 34 states.
That's right.
It's got to be an amendment that a supermajority of the American people want. And this is the only amendment I can think of that's the case. So that's why we're going to get it done.
And it becomes a little dangerous when you start to pile on different issues, because you start to thin out that support. As soon as you start to add different things on top of this, that's why the single focus is so important.
Well, we've got an 84% national approval rating, thereabouts, give or take, plus or minus a point. With that kind of public support, it is the only single issue, that can ever reach the threshold of 2/3. It is the only one. The other, there are a lot of things that Article 5 should be used for. Should. But as long as the opposition is out there and promoting all that fear, it's never going to happen. Term limits can get there. Once that happens, that'll open the door for a whole host of other issues to be attacked.
Amen, brother. That's it.
Yeah.
I think everybody believes in balanced budget and campaign finance and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you start to layer those on, you start to thin the support. And once you get term limits, the other things will start to fall in line.
And what makes this so unique? Okay, number one is single subject application, one amendment. It's something all Americans are very familiar with, because we have term limits at all levels of government, at the state level, in 15 legislatures, for governors. We even have it at school boards and town municipalities. Okay, it's something everybody understands. You don't have to explain it. And all it is number of years in office. And we got the 22nd Amendment for the U.S. president. And so this is something that it's a perfect storm for an Article 5 convention to be called, because it hits all of those parameters that we need in order to be successful. And so I'm encouraged by. I know it's a heavy lift, guys, and there's times where it's never going to happen. But I'm encouraged as we see more and more people get frustrated with Congress. I see us getting there, and it's going to start a snowball effect.
And it's going to take both sides, because it takes 34 states to win this. There are about 18 Republican-ran states. There's about 17 Democratic-ran states. I take a few, and a few that are mixed. You've got to get 34 to agree on something. You can't go just to Republican states. You can't go just to Democratic states and get this done. The numbers do not work.
Let me address the vote. The vote question came up, and this is something we have to address every time. For those of you that are new to U.S. term limits, we get it. We should be able to vote for it, right? Unfortunately, we can't. We've been there. We've done that. We got the T-shirt. We did vote for this. 21 states voted to put term limits on their own members of Congress in the 90s. The U.S. Supreme Court, in the case against us, it was U.S. term limits versus Thornton, overturned all of those laws that were passed by the people at the ballot box. And the court ruled the only way this can be accomplished is under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution with an amendment. So unfortunately, we cannot vote for it. And so that's why we're doing it this way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm going to address this in the comment section of the Facebook broadcast, but you cannot vote on this. You do not have the ability. You do not have the authority. And whether it's right or wrong doesn't matter. It is how it is. I mean, the United States Supreme Court was very clear in Thornton versus U.S. term limits. It was us that we were the ones in front of the United States Supreme Court. You have to amend the Constitution. That's actually in the decision. You have to amend the Constitution.
The 34 states is the shortest path to getting this done. You're not going to overturn the Supreme Court hearing on this, which says it has to be an amendment. You're never going to talk Congress into supporting this until they're absolutely threatened with it. So the shortest path to getting this done is Article 5, getting 34 states.
All right, so let's talk. Okay, we kind of covered the process. Let's talk about how everyone can get involved. You guys want to touch on that before we go?
You bet, Ron. Real quick, hit that.
Yeah, we put into the chat section, number one, it starts, table stakes for us is signing the petition. Once you sign the petition and you put in your address, it's not so we can send you mail. We don't send out mail. It's so that we can contact your legislators and let them know that you support and demand that they support term limits. When you've done that, once you've done signed the petition, then it'll allow you to go over and volunteer for other aspects in our organization. We have lots of different things depending on how much time you have. But it starts with you signing the petition. That's the table stakes. That's the leverage that we use to force these politicians to sponsor and vote for our term limits resolution.
Yeah, and it works. It works very, very well. The pledge is very simple. It's very straightforward. All it says is you will support a resolution calling for an Article 5 convention to talk about limiting the terms of Congress, period. That's it. There's no smoke, no mirrors. It's not ambiguous. It's very cut and dried. If you believe on limiting the terms of Congress, you sign the pledge, period. I mean, it's very easy. And so the members of the state legislatures will respond to their constituents. Who are their constituents? You are. If you ask them to sign that pledge, they're going to take notice. If you ask them for a meeting to discuss limiting the terms of Congress, a lot of them don't even know that they're the ones with the authority and the power to do this. They don't even know. And you can educate them and you can tell them that they have the authority. It amazes me that the states have completely given away all of their authority to the federal government. They no longer protect it. They no longer even understand that they have it. The states created that creature we call the federal government. The states have the power to fix that creature we call the federal government. The states have all the authority. The states have the power. And it's up to us to convince them to use it. Period.
So let me just kind of wrapping things up. So if you are out there, if you haven't signed our petition, just go to our website, make sure you sign the petition as Ron talked about. Share the video that we played in the beginning of this broadcast and get that on your Facebook page, Twitter, whatever you use for social media, email it out and put pressure on the candidates running for office in your state to get them to sign the pledge. We need more pledges coming in. All the information's on that video. And then the other item is you can also do this on Facebook. And if you go to our website up top on how to take action, we walk you through the steps on how to do this going to the candidate's Facebook page. And that's kind of fun. And we made it really easy to find them and just look for that take action. I think it's the fourth one down. It says get pledges on Facebook. And I noticed that Aaron, hey, first of all, I'm not used to being on this side of the emceeing thing. So I can't control everything. And I like to control stuff in case you haven't noticed. But Aaron's and I appreciate, there he is. Yeah, buddy.
There he is.
It's a pleasure to take the helm of control.
Yeah, I'm not used to this, so I appreciate you doing this on the background. But if you want to pull that screen back up, and this is how people can get involved to volunteer. We've got volunteers making phone calls in states to get candidates to sign the pledge, which is going really well. And maybe, Aaron, if you can also pull up the pledge press releases so people can see what we do with these pledges. So there's the volunteer page. Let us know how you want to get involved. We're trying to get this done in a number of states. All three of us work in different regions, and in many.
Hey, can I say something here too? Start by calling your legislator. There's a tab on our website that allows you to reach out to your legislator. So when you sign up the petition to begin with, you put in your address and that reaches out to them. You can do that multiple times by just going into our website and reach out to your legislator. and then put your name in there. We send them emails. We even got it set up in some cases where we make phone calls. So you can do that multiple times, by the way.
Yeah, and Aaron, go ahead and pull that up if you can full screen that shot. Appreciate it. There we go. Yep, and it's a real simple form. And while you're there, are you actually on the website? Can you go over to the news section and show the press releases for the pledge signers? That's kind of cool. Just to give you an idea, I sent those out to the candidates that I got the pledges from last week. And when I sent them the press release, they were like, wow, thank you so much. And they were really impressed by our digital team putting out the social media page, meme, and also the press release. So that will go out to the media outlets in their district. So if you could just hit the solo on that one right there so people can, there you go. Yep. So that's what they look like, and they look great. You know, I actually like the new style with the flag in the background. That's really nice looking. And that's all I got. Clark, you still with us? There we go. I think he had to move Clark out so we can show the pages. Anyway, hey, Ron, do you see any questions we can address before we wrap this segment up?
No, I think we touched on a couple bases. You know, I put in that link where you can reach out and contact your legislator. So if you want to volunteer, that's an easy thing to do. You could do that in 10, 15 minutes a week. So just keep plugging away and reaching out, because that's really the leverage that we use. I can't stress how important it is. We just finished a bunch of primaries on the West Coast. I know we have a bunch throughout the country. And so we're going to start to fine tune our focus towards those that won their primaries. And we've had a great year of getting pledges, so hats off to the pledge team for such a good job, and we've got more to do.
All right, and I think we lost Clark. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining us. Please do everything that you can to either volunteer, spread the message. Let's get a bunch. I'm looking at the video that we played at the beginning. There's 254 views on it. Let's get that to 1,000 by next week. Okay, I want to see a bunch of views on that video, so it shows we're getting the word out, because that hopefully will motivate some of these candidates to get on board. Clark, you back? Any final words of wisdom?
No, I think you guys covered it very well. Thank you. And Quinn, I wanted to thank you for all the work that you've done on those videos. And Aaron, I wanted to thank him for backing us up on this and doing such a terrific job of producing this broadcast. So, man, this made it really easy, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm done hosting it. So thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Even for the control freak, Mr. Quinn.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. All right.
He was still trying to steer it on his keyboards. I could watch him. He was moving that mouse trying to control it.
I know. It's going to be a hard habit to break, I'm afraid.
Good job, Aaron. Thanks all.
Term limits on Congress. The U.S. Supreme Court decided in 1995 that the only way to impose term limits on Congress is by an amendment to the Constitution. There are 2 steps to getting an amendment. 1, proposal, and 2, ratification. Notice, there is no such thing as a national ballot initiative to put this to a vote of the people. The first step is to propose the amendment. That can be done either through Congress or through the states at a national convention. Since we know that turkeys won't vote for Thanksgiving, our mission is to get 34 states to pass resolutions calling for the National Term Limits Convention. In the meanwhile, we do have resolutions in the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives to prepare for when Congress sees the writing on the wall and rushes to pass the amendment on their own terms instead of being forced to accept the terms proposed by the states. Once the proposal is written and passed, it must go to the states and be ratified by 38 of them in order for term limits on Congress to become part of the U.S. Constitution, just as the president has. So you see, states are the only government entity that can both propose and ratify amendments to the Constitution. No Congress needed. Please support our mission by signing the petition at termlimits.com/.
The most resistance we had from balancing the budget over a 10-year period was from all the senior members, particularly the appropriators in the Senate, including and especially the Republican leadership. It was just such a good example of a wave of new people who came in with fresh from the campaign trail, where they made all these promises and commitments to people, and they came with vision and just love for the country. But everyone told them immediately that their expectations were too high. And that's what this place does to you. It dumbs down your expectation within weeks of getting here. And the nexus of power and reward is all from seniority. The fundraising gets more, the special interests get behind you, and then you have more control of the communications. And if you are trying to cut spending, like if I had to give you one thing, it would be we've got to balance the budget. We cannot keep spending more than we're bringing in. But cutting anything in Washington has so much punishment associated with it by every constituent of every program that no reasonable person is going to keep doing that. You're either going to go home or you're going to get unelected. And so we've got all the incentives in place here to destroy our country. I think one of the only ways to change those incentives is to bring new people up here who know they're going to be here for a short period and they're going to give it everything they've got for their country, and one way or another they're going to go home. But if they're fighting for a lifetime career, they're going to do what all of you have suggested right away, the calculus of what do I have to do to stay here? And it's to do something up here and pretend to be something else back home. That's the game.